All right, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a really systemic issue that honestly impacts every single one of us. And that is how money actually works for modern families. We're going to look way beyond just the basic numbers to really understand how financial mechanics shape our futures, and most importantly, what that actually means for taking care of our families. We really need to start by looking at this, well, honestly, a pretty painful paradox. Why is it that families living in some of the absolute wealthiest countries in the world are constantly struggling with money? It's incredibly ironic, isn't it? We can work hard all our lives, do so much to raise our kids, just to see them finish college completely burdened with debt. And then after all that, we eventually retire poor. It often feels like this uphill battle that we just can't seem to win.
And if you're feeling that kind of anxiety, let me tell you, you are definitely not alone. This feeling is incredibly universal. A staggering 79% of Americans feel financial stress. Think about that. More than half the population is living paycheck to paycheck right now. And the debt is just staggering. 62% of Americans are carrying credit card debt. These aren't just dry statistics on a page. These are our families, our friends, our neighbors.
And hey, the picture looks just as gloomy north of the border, too. This is a massive, systemic North American issue. To put it into perspective, an astonishing 25%, that's 1 in 4 Canadians, actually have to borrow money just to buy everyday food or cover basic daily expenses because they simply run out of cash. These numbers really paint a picture of widespread, chronic financial exhaustion.
Section 1. A timeline of economic turbulence. If you feel exhausted, well, there's a good reason for it. The new millennium brought just a relentless series of hurdles. We started out with all that fear over the Y2K computer bug, which was immediately followed by the dot-com bubble bursting in March of 2000, sending the whole stock market into a freefall. Then, just a year later, the September 11th tragedy ushered in a completely new reality of market volatility. After that, the massive 2008 subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. And then, just as things kind of seemed to stabilize, 2020 brought the COVID-19 global pandemic, a literal once-in-a-generation disruption. The economic impact of all these events, I'm talking lost jobs, wiped out savings, plummeting home values, bankruptcies, it's just constantly destabilized families.
Section 2. The generational wealth squeeze.
Now, while we all live through those turbulent times, the exact financial burden you're carrying depends a whole lot on when you were born. When we break down the generations, a unique picture of massive hurdles really emerges for each one. Take the 71 million baby boomers, for example. With 10,000 of them turning 65 every single day, many were hit hard by those crises right before retirement. Now, they're struggling to survive because they just weren't prepared. Then there's Generation X. These middle-aged adults are caught in a brutal squeeze. They are absolutely sandwiched between paying growing bills for their own kids and taking care of their aging parents. And then we have Millennials, who are actually America's largest living generation right now at over 72 million. They're facing a wildly different economy. They are competing in this globalized labor market where companies can easily send operations overseas, and they're constantly fighting against advances in software and automation that threaten to replace them with temp jobs.
Section 3. How debt became normal.
Let's shift gears for a second and look at how society's attitude towards spending completely transformed. Because in the decades following World War II, there was this very comfortable mindset. People really believed that if they just got a good degree and a good job, their union or their company or the government would safely take care of them in retirement. So saving aggressively? It just wasn't the top priority. But as we moved into the 1980s and 90s, money became so much more accessible. Suddenly we saw easier loans and credit cards absolutely everywhere. Spend now, pay later became the ultimate mantra. Consumer debt soared, and living with debt suddenly became totally normal.
And that mindset shift resulted in what we now see as a lifetime of debt. It's completely accepted today that from the time you enter college all the way until you reach old age, you're going to be saddled with student loans, then the credit cards, then the car loans, and finally those massive mortgages. We've basically become incredibly active spenders, but deeply passive savers. We toss some money into a 401k or an RSP and just cross our fingers, hoping someone else is taking care of the whole shebang.
Section 4. The Financial Awakening. But here is the silver lining to all of this. Families are finally waking up and paying attention. The biggest hurdle in this awakening, though, is financial literacy itself. The financial industry is huge, yet financial literacy is often treated as this murky jungle of complex rules for stocks, funds, and credit cards. Nobody teaches us this stuff in school. It is completely normal to feel lost. Most people have trouble balancing a checkbook or reading a simple financial statement, yet we swipe credit cards every single day without understanding the hidden charges. We stick insurance policies in a file cabinet and just forget about them. We simply don't know what we don't know.
So, to rebuild our financial foundations, we need a massive mindset shift. The old days of passive dependence, where you just sit back and hope the company or the government manages your money and saves your retirement, those days have to end. A new era of proactive financial freedom has to begin, and that starts with doing exactly what we're talking about today, learning the basic fundamentals of how money actually works.
Now, I know entering the gate of financial knowledge might seem super intimidating, but the path is entirely doable for everyday people. Step 1, you just need to understand the simple, fundamental basics. Step 2, use that knowledge to plan and build a strong financial foundation. And Step 3, finally take control of your family's future. You absolutely do not need to be a Wall Street expert, you really just need to understand the simple rules of the game.
And I want you to truly, deeply internalize this quote from our source material today. There is nobody more interested in your financial future than you are. That is a powerful, undeniable realization. It is definitely not the government, and it is for sure not your employer who is going to guarantee your comfort. It's your responsibility, and honestly, it's your greatest opportunity.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. And I want to leave you with this one vital question to think about. What is your family's first step toward financial knowledge? Remember, you have the ability to control your future. You just have to decide to take that proactive step today. Thank you so much for joining me to explore how money works for families. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.